Namo Namaha. We'll start. Namassundaranathaya tasmai halasya vasine chaturshishti vidhalila yenakari bhuvastale Shrimat Sundaranathasya devim shaparalochanam kalaye hridaye nityam kadamba vanavasinim Putam swataf putataram tatoyad gangampaya shankara mauli sangat tatpatu matav pranaya paradha padahataihi putatamam tato naha. So today is the sixth session of Shivaleelarnavam. We finished till the 8th Shloka. The poet starts off with a couple of verses on Guru Vandana, Ishtadevata Vandana, and then Guru Vandanam. And then when there is one shlokam which we spoke about in detail, which we looked at in detail, which is his namaskarams to the Jyotis Swarupam. And that Jyotis Swarupam is the Shabda Brahma. The importance of Shabda Brahma is not new in our system. Many poets have given that importance. In fact, in Alankara Shastram, Dandin starts off his Kavya Darsham with Idam Andham Tamah Kritsnam Jayeta Bhuvanatrayam Yadi Shabdakhvayam Jyotihi Asamsaram Nadipyate. This entire world will be submerged in tamas, in andhakara. If this Jyotis Swarupam, which is called Shabda, Yadi Shabda Akhvayam Jyotihi Asamsaram Nadipyate. Right from the beginning to the end, we have had this concept or this notion of sound, which is the light for this entire world. That is the Jyotis Swarupam here. He also, further he says, especially for a person who wishes to write kavyam, that Shabda Jyotihi is very important. Na vidyate yadyapi purvavasana gunanubandhi pratibhanam adbhutam shrutena yatnena cha vak upasita. If that vak devata is being worshipped, dhruvam karotyeva kamapyanugraham. Vak devata will definitely give some sort of an anugraha or a grace to show that grace to that person. And it is essential for a person who is trying to pursue who is wanting to write shlokas or kavyam, who wants to be a kavi. In Saundaryalahari also, you find the importance of worshipping Saraswati. In, I think, the 15th shloka or so, Sharad Jyotsna Shuddham Shashiyuta Jatajuta Mukutam Varatrasatrana Sphatika Gutika Pustakagaram Sakran Natva. Sakratu Natva. If he even worships her just once, then he becomes a person who writes very beautiful and sweet poetry. Now this, by writing the poetry, the poet proclaims or makes the other person, people in the world attain fame. Sahitya Vidya Jaya Ghantaya Eva Samvedayante Kavayo Yashamsi Yatha Asyam Dvanihi Ujjihite. It is not enough if the poet just strings a couple of words together and says this is poetry. There should be much more to it than just an arrangement of words. It has to give rise to some beautiful suggestive meaning. And that suggestive meaning can be in the form of either an idea or an alankara, or it can also be something called rasam. Before I move on to the next shlokam, in this shloka there were two doubts about the two dhatu. One is samvedayante. Samvedayante, there are two root words for that. One is from vid jnane. The other root is vidl labhe. Labhe prapti. So the nijanta form for that is samvedayante is the nijanta form for both vetti and for vindati. Vindati is prapnoti. Here vedayate, he prapayati, he brings fame because to himself, samvedayate, atmanepadi vartate. So you take it as a poet brings fame to himself because of the poetry that he writes. If he doesn't write poetry, nobody is going to know that he is a poet. And he has to use his literature, Sahitya Vidya, in order to bring a fame to himself. Or another way to look at it is, literature texts, people who write Alankara Shastra, who are analyzing these literature texts, who analyze the kavyas, they bring fame to these poets too. They themselves are poets, and they analyze poetries of other works of other poets and bring fame to poets. Ujjihite, that verb is also, it is not ha, as someone else pointed it out to me at another occasion. He said it is ohang gatau, and that is, I think it is also juhotyadi ganam. So I just wanted to point that out in this shloka. Now we'll move on to the next one. In this also, he is trying to bring the importance of dhvani in this. More than anything, in this shloka, the poet is saying that mridutvam is avashyakam in the both the poet and the person who is listening. Yavat kavehe mardavam uktibandhe yavat dhiyaha shirotari komalatvam tavat dhvanau tad vyati bheda mule taratvam alankritikaha vadanti. Yavat kavehe uktibandhe yavat mardavam. Kavehe uktibandhe, in the poet's speech, uktibandhe, uktehe vachanasya bandhe, bandhe ityukte grathanam. His the todukkaradhu, in Tamil we say, varthegala todukkaradhu. You put those words in such a manner, you arrange it in such a manner that it seems like a garland. So kavehe ukti bandhe, the way they arrange their speech, in that arrangement, yavat mardavam vidyate, as much as there is a softness in that ukti bandha. Softness is, I will come to what he terms as softness later. So I will give the basic bare meaning of the shloka and then move on to the details of it. Kavehe ukti bandhe, in the poet's speech construction, yavat mardavam, yavat pramanam, yavat parimanam mardavam saukumaryam vartate tasya ukta vachane. One more condition is there. The second condition here is Shrotari, in the person who is listening to these kavyams, Shrotari, Dhiyaha Komalatvam. Shrotari, we are not talking about the Shariraka Komalatvam atra na vivakshitam. Atra kevalam Dhiyaha, Buddhehe Komalatvam vivakshitam. There should be a softness in the way the listener receives the poetry from the poet. Any work that is being placed in front of him, the poet might have something in his mind. The one who listens to it also should be of the same frequency. That's why in Alankara Shastra, we call the listener not just a mere listener, but he should be a sahridaya. Samana hridayam vyasya iti sahridayaha. He should be on the same wavelength as the poet. He has to understand what the poet is trying to convey here. Tari yavat kavehe mardhamam uktibandhe vidyate yavat cha shrotari dhiyaha buddhehe komalatvam vidyate mridulata, that the softness that is there in the listener. Now this is the basis for differentiating or giving talking about the, let's say, taratvam, whether this is better or that is better. How are we going to differentiate between two works? It is based on two things. One is the poet's speech, it should be soft. The other thing is the listener's mind should also be able to receive, and it should also be soft enough to receive the poet's words. Then tavat dhvanau vyatibeda mule, tavat parimanam taratvam. Taratvam is atishayanam, or it is the excellence. That much of excellence is present in the suggestion dhvani, which is of different types. Vyatibedam. Vyatibedaha is vi ati bhedaha, visheshena atishayaha bhedaha tanmulam tu dhvanihi. How are we going to distinguish between two poetries? We use the differences in dhvani and then decide whether this is better or not. How do we decide the excellence? How do we rank the poetries? So tavat Tad vyatibheda mule ukti bandhasya vyatibheda mule vyatibhedam atishaya bhedaha. The differences in the difference in the suggestion or the ukti, that is the moolam, basis for dhvani. This is a visheshanam for dhvani. So tadvyatibheda mule dhvanau taratvam alankritikaha vadanti. Alankara shastrajnyaha shastram ye jananti tam alankara shastram parishilayitum ye jananti te asmin dhvanau vyatibheda mule dhvanau taratvam vadanti. Okay. So how do we decide between the how do we decide the steps, or not steps, how do we rank these poetry? We rank it based on dhvani. So dhvanau taratvam vadanti alankritikaha. Ke vadanti alankritikaha vadanti. It is only those who knows the alankara shastra, poetics experts, talk of these differences in the suggestion that is present in kavyams. So dhvanau taratvam vadanti. Kidrisham dhvani, the kidrishaha dhvanihi, that dhvani is tadvyatibheda moolam. It is based on the ukti bandha, differences in the ukti bandha. Ukti bandham here is what the poet writes. So the way the poet constructs a poem, and if see, let's say Kalidasa constructs it in a different manner, constructs his poetry in a different manner, Bharavi constructs it in a different manner, he writes poetry in a different manner. In the same way, you know, you have to receive the suggestion coming out of Bharavi's poetry is also in a very different manner. The same way, Kalidas, the suggestion, dhvani that comes out of Kalidasa's poetry is also very different. The receiver should have the frequency to receive both sort of dhvani. Then he can decide which is better, right? So the tadvyatibheda mule tat tasya uktibandhasya vyatibheda mule visheshena atishayaha bhedasya atishayasya bhedasya moolam karanam dhvanihi vyangyarthaha. And that vyangyarthe tavat taratvam vadanti. They talk of that much of excellence in the suggestion, which is the basis for differentiating the poet's speech construction. Tadvyatibheda moolam, you'll have to translate it as differentiation in the poet's speech. Now, what is this based on? Two things. One is yavat kavehe mardavam uktibandhe mardavam shirotari komalatvam cha. Two things to decide this. Now, what is this uktibandhe mardavam? Now, there are two we call of pakas in Alankara Shastram, and pakas are Draksha Paka and Narikela Pakam. This is the broad spectrum of one is Draksha Pakam, the Narikela Pakam is on the other side. So in between you can have different shades of Paka. Paka is the definition for Pakam, I would say, is to I can't call it. There is no different. You can't call it as there is no definition as such for Pakam. You can only define Draksha Pakam and Narikela Pakam. So Draksha Pakaha is something where Bahihi Antaha cha Spurad Rasaha. Rasam, the beauty of a poetry, which is very clearly seen both inside and outside. In the sense, Vachyarthe api tatra rasa pratiti purvakaha Vachyartaha vidyate. Tadanantaram Vyangyartha pakshe yadi vayam gacchamaha, and then tatrapi spuradrasaha. Okay, so this is like a concept which you have to understand as to how rasa is reflected. That is Pakam. Okay, the way the rasa is understood by the receiver. So one is the moment he looks at the shlokam, the words are also beautiful. It reflects the rasa in the words. And at the same time, the more you get into the Vyangyartham, that also reflects the rasam. So it is very easy to understand the shlokas. One perfect example is Nilakanta Dikshita. The shlokam that we saw, you know, apasta anahato udbhutam, apasta bedam. On a very peripheral level also you could understand that shloka very beautifully. Even the first shloka, Putam Swatah Putataram Tatoyat Gangam Payaha Shankara Mauli Sangat. On a very peripheral level also you understand, and slowly you get into the shlokam layer by layer. You still the rasam is very easily brought out from the shlokam also, and the rasam is much more beautiful. So this is called draksha pakam, where in a grape, when you take the grape, the skin is very soft. So the vachyartha is very easy to understand. As soon as you put it in your mouth, you can feel the rasam immediately. Now this narikela pakam is coconut. You'll have to break the coconut first, which is the vachyartha, and then get to the rasam, which is your coconut water. Then it is sweet. The effort is fruitful when you get to the sweet water and taste it. In the same way, Bharavi's is called narikela pakam. If you go into his shlokas, any shloka, for example, in the first this thing, Katha Prasangena Janairudahrataat, a Vanechara comes and talks to Yudhishthira, and he says, Duryodhana is ruling his kingdom in such a great manner that people are soon going to forget your name. But at the same time, he is also afraid of you. He wants to portray that Bhayanaka Rasam. But the moment you read the shloka, it's going to take some time to understand the meaning of the shloka itself. Katha prasangena janairudahrataat anusmrita khandalasunu vikramaha tavabhidhanat yathate natananaha sadussahan mantrapadadiva uragaha. Initially, you will take a dictionary, try to fix the meaning of these words and try to find the vachyartham, because half the words that he uses, you will only find it in Kosham. It will take time for you to understand. Vyathate. Vyathate. Okay, what is this? Dukkayate manaha. Slowly, you will have to get to the meaning of he will use long samasas, compound words. He will not give short, beautiful words like this. Yavate kavehe ukti bandhe mardhavam. Atra kaha kashtaha vidyate vachyarthe. Kashtadavi nasti. So it's very easy to understand this shloka. But then when you go to Bharavi or Shishupala or even Naishadhakara is, according to me, is the toughest one here. So if there is any other pakam which is even more tougher to break and get the juice out of, then that is Naishadhakara. So it's like that. But then the rasam that you feel, after you have understood the vachyartham and gone to the vyangyartha, it will be a time well spent. Definitely. The way he brings out the rasam out of those words are just brilliant. In Bharavi especially, his shlokas have so much of artha gauramam. Every word has a weight of meaning within it. You'll have to experience the Kiratarjuniyam first Sarga for it. Definitely even Ramayanam is extremely simple. Whereas I won't say that about Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is more like Narikela Pakam. You can have both types of shlokas in it. When you look at Shri Shuka's Stuti, it is very easily understood. Whereas when you go to Bhishma Stuti, Itimati Rupakalpita Vitrishna, Bhagavati Sattvatam, when you start reading it, you will see the weight of that words. It'll take time to understand the Vachyartha and then get to the Rasa. It'll take time. So these are the two types of this thing. But then even whether it is Narikela Pakam or Draksha Pakam, this Ukti Bandhe Mardhavam is something different. It is not your Narikela Pakam or Draksha Pakam here. It is more to do with the way the poet has constructed the shlokas and how it flows. Whether in Kalidasa's shloka itself, whether you are trying to bring out Krodha, Raudra Rasam, or Bibhatsa Rasam, or Bhayanaka Rasam, or something very beautiful like Shringara, or Karuna Rasam, or Hasya Rasam, the way the construct has to be is, it should flow beautifully. There should not be any stops in between, or it should not, how do I say this? There are levels of layers to a kavyam in a poetry. It starts from the basic shariram like a meter. The meter should be conducive to the rasam. Rasam is probably the last layer. The first layer is your shloka, the meter, then the words, then you go to the artham, then you go to guna, then you go to rasam. All of these have to fall in place for you to be able to go from the words to the rasam. There should be a softness in that travel. Even if it is a difficult path, there should be a smoothness to that travel. The more we study Kavyam, we will understand whether it is difficult to understand or whether there is a Mardavam in the Ukti Bandha in the speech or not. Okay. So, Yavat Kavehe Mardavam Keshu Kavya Shastreshu Gante. I will address the shlokas at the end. Questions at the end. So, Yavat Kavehe Mardavam Ukti Bandhe, Yavat Dhiyaha Shrotari Komalatvam. Shrotari in a listener, Dhiyaha Komalatvam. As long as there is a softness, or he should be able to receive it. The moment you hear a poetry, you should not say, oh, what is the big about this poetry? There is nothing. If the moment a Shrota shuts his mind to the poetry, then he will not be able to get to the frequency of the poet. So it will be very difficult for him to understand from where the poet comes from. Right? So my professor would always say, the first point you have to do is try to justify the poet. And if you are not able to justify, then you can try to amend whatever is there. Amend is you can try to correct whatever is there. If you are not able to justify him, then it means you have still not tried to go into the frequency of the poet. Right? So, Yavat Kavehe Mardavam Uktibandhe Yavat Dhiyaha Shrotari Komalatvam. As much as Tavat, that much of Vyatibeda Mule Dvanau Taratvam. Taratvam is generally in Sangeetam we say Taraha, Madhyama, and then Mantara. These are all sthayis. We talk about the pitches when we say that, and Taratvam is always the higher pitch in Sangeeta Shastram. That is a technical term. Whereas Taratvam here would just mean excellence or Atishayanam. Katham atishete idam kavyam katham asmat kavyat atishete iti tatra there is a gunaha. That gunam is called taratvam or excellence. Alankritikaha tavat taratvam vadanti. Alankritikaha is a very difficult word to explain. If you go into the sutras of Panini, you will not find this because there is a gana for which you can use this thak pratyaya, whereas in that ganam you don't have the word alankara at all. You can form it in some way. Panini Sutras allows this word to be formed. Even alankarika, the word alankarika itself, as a person who studies the shastram, alankara shastram, as a branch of study, this word cannot be formed with the given sutras. But this must have come about only in the 14th century or so. So this is a much later coined word, is what I feel. So alankarikaha or alankara shastrajnaha iti vaktum shakyate, or one who analyzes the different decorations of a kavyam. Kavyasya shabdalankaraha arthalankaraha keke santi iti, you can just take it as an alankara or a bhushanam, a word that indicates bhushanam. So bhushana vishaye ye jananti iti, you can take it in that manner and say alankritikaha. So komalatvam tad vyatibeda mule dvanau tavat taratvam vadanti. So kavehe ukti bandhe, in the poet's speech construction, there is as much of softness there is in the speech of a poet, and as much of tenderness there is in the intellect of a listener. Yavat dhiyaha komalatvam shrotari vartate tavat vyatibeda mule dvanau alankritikaha taratvam vadanti. One more shloka about this dhvani and rasam. Now here is where he goes into rasa. I find that these three shlokas talk about something like, vastudhvani, alankara dhvani, and rasadhvani. I'll just go back to this. The first shloka that we saw, there are 3 shlokas that he points out about Dhvani. So the first one he says is Sahitya Vidya Jayagantaya Samvedayante Yatha Yatha Asyam Ujjihite. So he was talking about the Jayaganta Sahitya Vidya, which is the just the Vachyartham, which is just a Vastu. He was only talking about the Mulyam there, probably the idea of Dhvani. The next one, he goes into the Alankara aspect of it and mentions the word Alankritikaha, those who all look for the different decorations. Now he goes into Astamita Anya Vidye, where he talks about the Rasadhvani. So there are 3 types of dhvanis. From the Vachyartha, you have a Vengyartha, a suggestion. The suggestion can be in the form of an idea. When I say in the first shlokam, when the poet was talking about Gangayaha Mahatvam, Tatra Gangayaha Pavitratvam Yatha, it also shows the Bhakti will be more of a Bhavadvani. Any idea there that you can talk about? Okay, Matuhu Atishayatvam is a Vastu, is just an idea. Okay, the Devi's greatness is an idea that is suggested in the first shloka. So that is an example for a Vastudvani. Or a Pavitratvam, when I said Gangayam Ghoshaha, where there is a Prayojanam, and in that Prayojana you say that Gangayaha Pavitratvam Atava Shitalatvam Grihe Api Vartate iti Pavanatvam Shitalatvam cha Tatra Vyajyate iti Yatha Vayam. When we spoke about it in the last session, that Pavitratvam is also an idea that is suggested. When I talk of an Alankara that is suggested, Matuhu Charanantu Shankara Maulehe Api Adhikataram Vartate. It is better than the head of Shiva because Ganga has become even more pure when it had the Matuhu Charanasparshaha. Then there I am talking of an Alankara which is suggested, which is Vyatireka Alankaraha. That is called Alankara Dhvani. That is the next step. Now, when a rasam or a bhava is suggested, where the poet is showing his bhakti towards his preeti towards Devi, that sort of a thing is bhakti is also a bhavam that comes out there. It is suggested, then that is called rasa, rasadhvani or rasa bhavadhvani, anything. Now, that is the third variety, and that rasadhvani is called the Atma Upakavya. Now, in this shloka, which is the concluding part of talking about the greatness of Dhvani, Asmin Mahati Astamita Anyavedye Visritvare Vichi Tarangaritya Kavyadhvanau Jagrati Deha Bhajam Karnam Vishayuhu Katham Anya Shabdaha. When people recognize that Rasadhvani, no other words are going to get into their ear. The moment they understand that Rasadhvani, nothing else will, it'll show its face at that point of time. The moment you understand that this shloka has this rasa, the moment when you listen to Kumarasambhavam, when Manmatha comes and hits the Banam, and Prabhu, their Ishvara, he becomes very angry and he looks at Manmatha there, Krodham Prabho Samhara Samhareti. All the devas come there and say, you'll have to control your anger. At that point of time, he just looks at the cause of his chanchalam, the cause of his disturbance, and he looks at Manmatha. The next moment, Bhasmavashesham Madanan Chakara. The next moment, there was only ashes there. There is no such thing as, he opened his third eye. And then from there, the Agni, this is not some Mahabharata serial that you're watching on this thing, TV. This is just a kavyam where in one shloka, he is able to bring out that Raudra Rasa. He was so disturbed by that, and he had to immediately, he brought Manmatha to ashes. So in that shlokam, the moment you understand that shlokam gives rise to that Raudra or that, or Karuna Rasam for Rati, when Rati cries, the moment you understand that, nothing else is going to be there in your mind. That Rasam will always take importance in your mind. So, Asmin Mahati Kavyadhvanau Jagrati Sati. The main sentence here is, Anya Shabdaha Dehabhajam Karnam Katham Vishayuhu. Anya Shabdaha, other words, Samanya Shabdaha, Ye Rasam na Abhyanakti. Tadrisha Shabdaha Katham Karnam Vishayuhu. How will they enter the ears of a person who is only tuned to understanding that rasa? Right? So when the person who is listening, Shrotari yadi dhiyaha buddhehe kaumalatvam vidyate, tarihi jhatityeva kavyasya vachyartha avagamananantaram vyangyarthasyapi avagamanam jayate raso api jayate tatra manasi. So the moment that rasaha comes into play, anya shabdaha katham vishayuhu. How is it possible that other words which do not give rise to any, which is untouched by any vyangyartha, there is no vyangyartham there, those are just ordinary words, and how is that word going to enter the mind of karnam, the ear of deha bhajam, persons? Deham dehana bhajanti iti manushyaha. Yesham manushyanam avagamane vyangyartaha jataha vyangyartha bodhanantaram kadam vyangyartam abodayantaha shabdaha antargacheyuhu. It is not possible for them. So what is the condition that he gives here? He says, when such a great poetic suggestion is present, kavya dvanau jagrati sati. Tatra sati saptami vartate. Jagrati also jagarti, jagritaha, jagrati. Iti latlakare prathama purushe bahuvachane api jagrati iti padam upayajyate, parantu atra it is shatra pratyayam and saptami, sati saptami. So jagrati sati, kavya dvanau jagrati sati, when this kavyasya dvanau rasarupatmakam dvanihi, rasabhutaha dvanihi yadi jagrati. If it is jagrati is not, it means literally awakening, right? One who is awake. You can't call it as prabuddhe sati. Yadi tatra, if it is suggested, if it is seen by people, yadi prakati kritam, tarhi, how is this kavya dhvani now? Asmin, in this mahati, it is a great poetic suggestion. Dhvanihi tu, it is the ultimate suggestion here. And astamita anya vedye, anya vedyam sakalam astamitam. When a Sahridaya is in that point, he doesn't think about anything else. Only that rasa takes place. Jagannatha Mandita calls this rasa as Bhagna Varana Chit Eva Rasaha. I'll come to the process of that rasam again, because you'll have to understand how everything else is not seen when this rasam is there. Visritvare, this dhvani is visarati tatshilaha, visartum shilaha yasya iti visritvaraha. It's another pratyaya that is added, prasarana shilam ityarthaha. So the kavya dhvani, which is capable of spreading everywhere. The moment you understand that dhvani, you will start slowly, your senses are become more aware to dhvani. You will start understanding dhvani in every shloka. Slowly you will try to look for that dhvani and fish it out. Right? So visritvare, it also spreads everywhere around you, and you forget the Nayaka or the Nayika or what they did before. All of that is totally gone. Astamita anya vedye. Anyat sarvam anyesham vedyam yasmin astamitam. Something that you do not understand, you do not think of any other items there at all. You don't think of, those two people are meeting in one big beautiful grove and all that is gone. Vichi taranga ritya visritvare. How is it spreading? It is spreading in the manner of how the waves leap, they jump. Vichinam waves, tarangasya, tarangaha atra plavanam ityarthe upayujyate. Otherwise, you will have to call it as punarukti dosha, because the word vichi and taranga both mean the same. Whereas here you will take it as vichinam tarangaha plavanam, tat plavanasya ritya prakarena, in the manner of leaping waves, this Dhvani keeps spreading. It has the quality of spreading in the manner of leaping waves. What is he trying to say here? Now, Dhvani or Rasad Dhvani needs a lot of, you'll have to break it down into something called Vibhava, Anubhava, and Vyabhichari Bhava. For a rasa to come about, you want two people there first. Without people, you're not going to understand rasam. You don't just look at a tree and say, okay, there is rasam. No, you'll have to have a nayaka or a nayika, or a nayaka and a pratinayaka to understand Veera Rasam. Let's say Rama and Ravana here, or Arjuna and Karna, or Arjuna and Jayadratha. Let's take a different example for it, because everybody will take Dushyanta and Shakuntala. It's the easiest, and Shringaram is the easiest to understand. I prefer Karunam or Veeram here. So let's talk of Arjuna and Abhimanyu, whose death has caused Arjuna into spurning, pushing him into revenge, taking revenge also. So these two are the Vibhava here, the persons from where the rasa has to come. Just merely having Arjuna and Jayadratha there is not going to give rise to Veera Rasam, or even Raudra Rasam or Karuna Rasam, any rasa for that matter. There has to be a situation there which causes it, which kindles it. Sahatu Uddipana Vibhavaha. Yatra rasasya uddipanam bhavati tadapi avashyakam khalu. So you need that uddipanam also, which kindles the effect of that rasa, which is maybe a battlefield. If Jayadratha and Arjuna are sitting in the Nripa Sabha, Rajya Sabha, there is no Veera Rasam there, or there is no Raudra Rasam there. It is only in the battlefield, and maybe Arjuna is sharpening his arrows, and then you will understand the revenge motive that is there in his mind, and then the krodham can also be felt when you see the scene of Arjuna doing some action. If Arjuna is just standing there like a pillar, you're not going to understand it. You will need some anubhavas. He should have an angry face. Maybe his eyes are red without sleeping. Think of all those things. And those are all subtleties that even in films, when you see a film today, you can start recognizing those subtleties which lead to that rasa. If the eyes are red, or if he is doing an action which is showing that, if his lips are, throbbing, he is so angry. At the same, he is also upset that Abhimanyu is dead, but at the same time he is controlling his grief so that he can fight with Jayadratha there and kill him. That is his motive here. So he has to bring in that Raudra Rasa in him to kill Jayadratha. So the way he controls that rasa, those sort of actions, those sort of vibhavas, and all of these will be gone when you experience that rasa at a certain point. These small subtleties will never shine forth once you understand that, oh, look at the Krodha rasam that he is trying to bring out. When Arjuna fights Jayadratha, all of these initial actions, even the battlefield, will be lost in that moment. Now, when we sing, there is a great musician who said once, as you get into the ragam, the words, the meanings of the words, all of them just slowly fade away. You will just be so absorbed in that ragam itself, and you will start feeling that rasam there. You will forget what the words were. So that is the closest that you can get to understanding the rasam from the kavyam. Slowly, once you get into the frequency, once you become a sahridaya with the poet, you will start understanding that rasa. So asmin mahati, in this great astamita anyavedye, where everything else, vibhava, anubhava, vyabhichari bhava, ityadinam vedyam, the understanding of all of these things, slowly there is a cessation of it. You stop thinking about all of these things. So that sarvam astamitam tatra visrutvare vichitarangaritya visrutvare, and slowly it is only that bhavam that just occupies in your mind. When you think of Krishna standing in front of Yashoda, Yashoda is very upset that Krishna has stolen butter, and she is trying to threaten him. And the child is crying. There are tears in his eyes. So when you look at that scene, you slowly forget about Yashoda or Krishna or what he did and everything, and you will only feel, if you are looking at that child as God, then you will only, your heart will be filled with bhakti there. Or if you are looking at it as a child, your heart will be filled with vatsalyam there, right? Both, either bhavam, it depends on the sahridaya. So that is a perspective there. So astamita anyavedyam, everything else is gone, and then slowly, like the waves, like the leaping of waves, this dhvani spreads in the mind. So kavya dhvanau jagrati sati, manasi udbhute sati, yada dhvanihi udbhutaha bhavati, tada Dehabhajam Manushyanam Karnam Anya Shabdaha Katham Vishayuhu. How is it possible for Samanya Shabdaha? Kvachitapi Vyangyarthena Asprishtaha Samanya Shabdaha Pravesham Na Arhanti. They cannot even enter there in the ear. Okay. So Asmin Mahati Astamita Anyavedye Visrutvare Vichi Tarangaritya Kavyadhvanau Jagrati Dehabhajam Karnam Vishayuhu Katham Anya Shabdaha. Now, with this dhvani background, now why is it that only some poets can write kavyams which have dhvani, and some poet just simply write a poetry with the, no, they are not famous poets. It's only some poets are, it's easy. Dhvani tatparyena kechit kavayaha eva likhanti, katham anye etadrisha kavyam kavyasya nirmanam kartum na prabhavanti. Why is it that they are not able to do it? So he says, there is an adrishta vishesha there. Kirnani ghanta patha eva hanta shabdartha ratnani giram savitriya Atyadarat amrishatam kavinam drikgocharam kasyachideva yanti. Only some people will find out those words. These are not words that are, put inside the locker and locked for double lock for safety. Nothing of that sort. Kirnani. They are just spread everywhere where ghantapathe, pradhana marge. Gantapatham is gantanam. Gantanam, gantadi vadya visheshaha. Okay. So gantadi vaditranam cha panthaha gantapathaha. I was just trying to think of which sutra applies there. Okay. So Ghantadi, think of it in olden times where you had one Pradhana Margam. Even now there is one highway. The other are all residential small roads. That was how it was before. This is no gully that we are talking about. It is the Pradhana Rajamarga, which is called Gantapataha. That is also called Rathya. A margam where a ratha can go is also called a gantapata. Gramadau, Rajyadau tu, yatra yaha pradhana margaha vidyate, tatraiva gantadikam vadayan gachanti janaha. Right? Money adichindu poradhu vandu, they don't go in small gullies, they only go in the main road. So that main road is called Gantapatha. In that Gantapatha, in the Pradhana Marge eva, the main road, all words and ratnani kirnani santi. You have to take it as two options now again here. So ratnani, gems are all strewn everywhere on the main road itself. Gems, not sadharana, not simple stones, but then gems are all strewn everywhere, are just placed everywhere. But can everybody notice it? Only some people say, I found a 100 rupee note on the road. I found a 50 rupee note on the road. These are all only bhagya visheshaha yesham keshanchit vartate teshameva drishtipathau. These gems fall in their eyesight. Not everybody can notice this money that is just thrown in the road. The same way here also, shabdaha arthaha cha sarvatra vidyante eva. Keshanchit drishtipathe eva tadrisha shabdarthaha rasamayaha shabdarthaha tesham drishtigocharam eva yanti gachanti. So, Giram Savitriya. Who is this who has thrown all these words and meanings everywhere? Giram Savitri. Savitri Sute. Prasute iti Savitri. This is Saraswati, Vagdevata. Giram Savitri, Giram Vacham, Gihi Girau Giraha. So Giram Vacham Savitri, Ya Prasute, Ya Janani, Vacham Janani Asti, Sa Saraswati Vagdevata, Shabdartha Ratnani, Ghantapathe Eva Kirnani, Hanta. Hanta ityukte, Hanta can be used, it's an avyayam that can be used for Shloka, Harsha, and then it can also be used for Nischayam, definite, in that is Hanta, Khalu, ityarthe api, Nischaye. So it is definitely, surely the most beautiful words which are like gems, Shabdartha Ratnani, Gantapate Eva, in the main road, on the main road itself, by the source of all speech, Giram Saraswatya are Kirnani. Kirnani is Vikshiptani. It is spread everywhere. Tooki potrukkum Kirnamna, it is just spread. Avladhan. Kirnani Gantapate Eva Hanta Shabdartha Ratnani. Now, if it is seen everywhere, why is it that only some people can take it? Adarat, Ati Adarat, na Kevalam Adaraha. Adaraha ityukte tatra Bahumanam Athava Prayatnaha ityapi vaktum shakyate. You don't need to take it as Adarava or respect. You take it as with great care. So Prayatnena, Savadhanena, na Kevalam Savadhanam, Ati, Atyadarat, Atishayaha Adaraha tatra avashyaka. You will have with great care, Atyadarat, Amrishatam Kavinam, Chinvatam Kavinam. One who searches with that intent. Now, there are people who go around the beaches to find out gold rings and all that, those who have lost all these things. It is those who want to go and find those only will find those things. One who is just casually sitting may not find it. Or you need a particular bhagyottaraha that he will talk about in a couple of shlokas later. So you should either have that bhagyam, adrishtam, or you should have that care and attention. Ati Adarat, with great care, Amrishatam, one who searches or collects. Amrishati, Mrishati here is actually, the literal meaning there is Parshanam or collection. You can also take it as collection. But Samantat Mrishati applies to Chintanam. It does not literally mean collection. So collection is for Ratnam. Chinoti iti ratna pakshe vaktum shakyate, shabdartha pakshe tu tatra chintayatameva. Alodya, buddhim alodya eva, shabdartha ratnani swikartum shaknoti kavihi. So Atyadarat, with a great care, Amrishatam Kavinam, only for those poets who think with great care, those words and meanings, Tani, those Shabdarthaha, Shabdartha Ratnani Tani, Kasyachideva Driggocharam Yanti. Even if poets, there may be many poets who try to think of those words and meanings, but it is only in the mind of someone. Kasyachidevi. Kasyachid. It is not specific, this only one person. It is some, you don't know who is going to understand that this thing. Kasyachiteva Drik Gocharam. Drik Gocharam, Drisham Gocharam. Gochara word means range of sight. So range is Gocharam. Gavaha Indriyani Charanti Asminne iti Indriya Vedyaha Vishayaha eva Gocharaha. Drik Gocharaha ityukte Drisham Gocharam. Drishti Patham. So they come within the range of the sight of only one poet. Kasyachideva Driggocharam Yanti. It is present everywhere, but only some people understand that. Okay. There are a couple of alankaras in the shloka. Maybe I'll deal with that and then we can move on to the questions. Okay. Gantapatha here is Pradhana Margam. One meaning is Pradhana Margam. The Pradhana Margam, as far as Kavya goes, is Itihasa. So there are a lot of words and verbs, vocabulary in Itihasa and Purana, which is like the Prasiddham ones. We know Ramayanam. If you take up Ramayanam, I'm telling you, you will come across words, even though it is very simple. At the same time, you will come across words that you don't find anywhere else. And those words, great kavis take those words and use it in their poetry. Very similar words they use. Hidam manoharicha durlabham vachaha. This is something that you find in Bharavi's Kiratarjuniyam. The same thing, the same idea, artham. It is not only shabda that they take from Itihasa and Purana. They also take meanings from Itihasa Puranam. This is just one example that I'm giving. In Kiratarjuniyam, he says the Vanechara comes and tells Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira is a king. This Vanechara is a messenger. He is actually a charaha. Charaha, spy. So the spy comes and tells him, I don't have the intelligence or the understanding of politics as you have, as the king has. After all, he is just a spy, and he is also a Vanechara, he's like a hunter. But then he comes and says, whatever I say, you have to take it in a good manner, because hitam, something which is beneficial, and manohari, something that is attractive to the mind. It is very difficult to find such words. The same thing in Ramayanam. Apathyasya cha pathyasya vakta shrota cha durlabha. Apathyasya cha maybe one word is, enaduma?
Apriyasya cha patyasya.
Correct. Apriyasya cha patyasya vakta shrota cha durlabha. Correct. Apriyam iti something which may be not pleasing to the mind. And at the same time, it is pathyam. It is beneficial. Apriyasya patyasya vakta shrota cha durlabha. Not everybody will come forward to give advice, because the first thing the other person will say is, who are you to give me advice? So these ideas can also be taken from great epics like Ramayana. That is what poets have done. That is why they are called Mahakavi, and their poetry is called Mahakavya. Yeah. So Shabdartha Rupani Ratnani. Now this Ratnam can also mean Shreshtavachi. Jatau yad utkrishtam tad ratnam abhidiyate tarhi shreshtaha shabdaha ityapi vaktum shakyate athava atra rupakalankaro vaktum shakyate shabdaha arthaha cha shabdarthaha te eva ratnani. They are gems. Or you can superimpose it and say that there is rupakalankaram also here. And Gantapatam, there is actually Atishayokti, where the mention of Itihasa Purana is not given, which means only the Upamanam is given, which is the Pradhana Marga. Tari Gantapata Rupa Vishayitaya Adhyavasanat Atra Atishayoktihi api asti. I'll stop with this and look at the question answers. So, what's the question here? Visritvare ityasya arthaha kaha. Okay. Visritvare Prasarana Sheelam. So Visarati Tatshilaha. Visarati ityukte Sarati is moving, and Visarati Visheshena Sarati. Visheshena Sartum Sheelam Asya iti. So something that is capable of spreading in that poetry. So here we will talk, it is about the Vishayam. Visritvare Dhvanau. Dhvani is capable of spreading everywhere, or spreading in the mind of the listener. The sutram there is, 1 minute. In nas jisarthibhyaha kwarap. Kwarap is the pratyam that is added there. In itvari. The common word that we all know is nashwaraha. Right? Nashwaraha, Nashwaram Jagat, that which is capable of, it is not eternal, it is capable of getting destroyed. Nashyati iti Nashwaraha. It has the property of becoming destroyed. So here also, Dhvani has the property of spreading. It spreads inside in such a manner that astamita anyavedyam, everything else is gone. You don't understand, you don't think of anything else, nothing else is present. Okay. You can say diffusing has the idea of, spreading to thinness. It's not like that. Diffusing na abde maranju pedu. It's more like pervading. Yes. I would take it as more vyaptam. I think someone raised a hand here. Vasanta Mahodaya. You can unmute yourself and talk, ask. Namaste.
You said that, we have to, the person who has that ability to understand, that they have to tune themselves to the mindset of the kavis, so that, they can understand what they portray. But,
Right.
Kavi may try to portray a concept, a rasa or dwani in a particular way.
Right.
But the listener, he assimilates it, he understands it, and he describes it in the way he understands. That is,
Correct.
according to his samskara. So
Correct.
every listener, will be understanding the same concept, the same rasa, the same dwani in different ways.
Absolutely.
Is there a possibility that this, the original concept, the original idea, the original intention of the kavi, will it be diluted, because of various ways of describing it or understanding it? It may be lost, isn't it? The original.
Yes, there is a high possibility of it getting lost. That's why we have, kavis like Apaya Dikshita, who have written Swavyakya for most of his stotras. In fact, he says people will misinterpret it in different ways. That is why I am writing a Vyakhyanam for my own stotram. Please do not misinterpret it. So there are people who have done that also.
He has made the job easier for everybody
Yes.
else.
Yes.
Because, the original dwani, the original rasa, that is important. And I don't know how far, it will survive after.
It's not about survival or anything. See, you have Alankara Shastrakaras who analyze certain texts. That's why you have different Vyakhyanams. For Kumarasambhavam or Raghuvamsha, if you take, for a popular kavyam like this, people still think of writing newer books because they think they can interpret it in a different manner. They can bring about a change in the interpretation that is already there. Right? So, if people want to start studying kavyam, they still start with Raghuvamsha. Right? And there are people, even for myself, on a personal experience, I'm telling you, the way I was teaching Raghuvamsham 20 years back is not the same way I teach today. There is so much of matter that I understand today, much more because of my experience, because of my samskara, that I understand something much more, this thing in this.
Okay.
Right? It makes a lot of difference. Even 10 years, you see things different yourself. So naturally, that is why, people don't get into this much. It's a very difficult shastram. People think that it is an easy shastram. It's not.
Thank you, ma'am. And one more thing, is are Vichi and Taranga the same thing?
It is the same meaning, but Taranga can also mean plavanam. In the sense of, the nulla, it's you change it into the noun form of the tarati iti tarangaha. So you can take it as the leaping and not the wave as such. See, karyam can also mean the work itself, or karyam can mean kartum yogyam, that which has to be done. You can take it in that sense also, right? Pathanam. Or if you say bhojanam, bhojanam also means the food, and bhojanam also means the act of eating.
Okay.
Bhojanam iti kriya api vaktum shakyate, right? That's why.
So it's not the same for Vichi, isn't it?
Here we won't take it as the same. That's all. But you can use tarangaha as Vichi. You can use tarangaha as waves.
Okay.
Yes, it is a taryayavachi also.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Haridas Mahodaya.
नमस्ते महोदय.
नमस्ते.
सो भवत्या तु विसृत्वरे इति अस्मिन् शब्दे सूत्रमुक्तं. तत्र अस्माभिः पूर्वं तुगागमः दृष्टः पूर्वम्. अत्रापि
यस् अत्रापि तुक् एव. यस्.
आम्. ततः परं कीर्णानि घण्टापत एव इति यदस्ति तत्र Gati shabdakarणे iti धात्वर्थं स्वीकृत्य अस्माभिः घण्टापथं नाम श्रवणपथम् इति उक्त्वा दृष्टिगोचरं ततः परम् आगच्छति. So now you have a nice I mean so on one side you can say, okay, man sees the gems on the highway, so seeing and associated with the highway and Gantapatha here. Then the other side is, okay, the Kavi hears the Gantapatha meaning the Shravanapatham, and then Drishti Gocharam meaning Jnana
Gocharam.
Jnana Gocharam iti. So a nice way of
as soon as you hear the words, you have to assimilate it and put it in your mind for you to understand it really well, and then produce it as a kavyam.
Right. And
So
also and also the Kavi has started off this whole Ganta business in the 8th Shloka, which is Sahitya Vidya Jaya Ganta.
Jaya Ghanta, yes.
Right, and then the Dhwani of the Ganta, the ring of the bell, happens everywhere. The next line is Dhwani Ruddhite, and then again that Gantapatha he hints it over here. So it's and then the Vichi Taranga, the waves of that Ganta, the sound. So it's so amazing how he carries that concept of
that's because he needs to highlight the importance of the concept of dhvani. You know, he comes at an age where he was in the 17th century, early 1600s, right, by which time people wanted to distinguish themselves from Kalidasa and other poets, and they started dwelling more into the Shabda Jalam. He was also a court minister, right? And as a minister there, he had to look at several different kavyams and, those poetry. People would come there. As a patron of arts, the king is going to allow every poet to come and recite his poetry in the sabha. And he has been listening to all of these poets who are using so much of Shabda Jalam and Artha Jalam that he wanted to insist on Dhvani. And so he brought this up, I think.
Right. But then Dhwani is not really the ultimate concept in Kavya Shastra as of now, right? I mean, Rasa is really the soul, right?
Rasa Dhwani is the ultimate. Rasa as a Dhwani, it should not be an Alankara. There is a Rasavad Alankara also. You can't call Rasa as the ultimate concept also. If you talk of Rasavad Alankara, it is still one step below Rasad Dhwani. So that both Rasa and Dhwani have to go together, hand in hand there, for it to be the ultimate concept.
Okay. And then when you said Kirnani Gantapate Eva, and you said Gantapatam could mean Itihasa there. Now that's by Lakshyartha, or how did you, like, is that, could you call it as Lakshyartha, or how would you say it?
So it is more, I won't go into Lakshana and all. You can say it is Sadhana Gauni Saropa Sadhyavasana. You can call it as Sadhyavasana, but I prefer to call it as Atishayokti, where this Adhyavasanam is your basic concept for Atishayokti Alankara. Sadhyavasana Lakshana is your concept that Mimamsaka have all given, and we use it also. But anything that is more beautiful, then you call it as Atishayokti Alankara, which is Sadhyavasana. It's the same.
Adhyavasanam nama Aropa
Nigirya Adhyavasanam, where the Upamanam is mentioned, but the Upameya is not mentioned.
How did you say it? What is the technical word that you just used prior to this?
Adhyavasanam.
Adhyavasana. No, the hidden. What was the word for the hidden that you used? Hidden Adhyavasanam.
Nigiryam ityukte, Nigirya vandu swallowing. It swallows the Nigirya Adhyavasanam iti, that's what Kuvalyanande Uktam asti.
So Grudhan meaning swallow, Grudhatu. So Nigirya means swallowed, which means unsaid basically.
Okay. Unsaid, yes. Unsaid.
Okay, so Nigirya Adhyavasanam is the technical term. Okay. Making a note here. Okay. So, okay. And so
there is one question about the Ganta Dhwani, because you were also mentioning it. Madurai Nagarasya Ragni Mangamma Mandira Ghanta Dhwani Shravananantarameva Parameva Bhojanam Karoti Sma iti Shruyate. So the importance of Ganta Dhwani in Madurai. See? That is why he probably places so much of importance. Thank you. Nice.
Evam. Okay. So when you say Gantapatha there, it means Itihasa. It's not really. it's not really a rupakam, but it's atishayokti by itself, you're saying, in the meaning of
Yes.
Sankasa.
Yes.
And it's not a rupakam because?
For rupakam, you
the-
have to have the mention of the upameyam also.
Oh, okay. Of the meme also. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then when you talked about the three kinds of dhvani in those three shlokas, and then you
Yes.
said Sahitya Vidya, Jaya, Ganta, and you said, okay, there it will be Vastu dhvani. Now that
Yes.
itself is a, tadapi dhvanitam iti bhati. Bhavatyaha.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the take. And then when you said that, you give an example for the Alankara Dhvani, where you said Charana, and can you explain that once again? Why is that not Vyatireka by itself? And you said it's Vyatireka Dhvani instead of Vyatireka by itself. Can you explain it once again if possible?
Anya samanya jananam charanasparshaha tu apavitrattvaya, Devi charanasparshaha tu pavitrattvaya. So her feet are so much more better than samanya janam. That is the Vyatireka there, which is suggested, which is not there in the Vachyartham.
So it's not a comparison between the feet of Devi and the head of Ishvara. But
No,
rather
I think I mentioned it wrong.
normal
Yeah.
people. And, okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if it is a comparison between Shiva's head and Devi's charanam, then it becomes Vachyam. It's not Vyangya. If it is a comparison between Samanya Jananam Charanasparshaha versus Devi Charanasparshaha, then it is Vyangya Vyatireka Alankara.
And the Vyatireka is Vyangya because there's no mention made of the normal person's feet. It's
Yes.
just Devi's foot is mentioned. And just by saying that, the implicit comparison with the normal person's foot is, or feet is suggested.
Yes. Yes.
And
comparison and saying that hers is better. Only when you say that hers is better, tatra vyatirekaha jayate. Otherwise, it is only upama.
And vyatireka meaning the upameya is better than the upamana. Yeah.
Or upamanam is better than the upameyam. It depends. I mean,
Okay. And then the final one you said was the rasadhvani. And what was the example that you gave for rasadhvani? Can you expand on that?
Which example I gave from Arjuna and
the Arjuna. So
Vibhava Anubhava Vyabhichari Samyogat Rasanishpattihi iti uchyate. So Vibhava are two characters. What is Dhunyate? You need a shlokam there to understand the Dhvani. In
okay.
அது வந்து ஒரு ஸ்லோகம் வெச்சுண்டா it will be easier. Otherwise, maybe next class I will come with an example and we can look at that.
Okay. Yeah. But in the example that you did talk about, it was Arjuna and Jayadratha as Vibhava, meaning Alambana, right?
Alambana, yes, Alambana Vibhava, and then Uddipana Vibhava would be your battlefield.
Would be that situation. Got it.
Battlefield, and maybe his actions of sharpening his arrows can be taken as there is a shloka in Auchitya Vichara Charcha where Arjuna uses his tears as water to sharpen his arrow. See, that will immediately evoke a sense of both Karunam and Raudram there. Veeram.
Right.
Right. So immediately that sense will be there in the mind.
And that's the dhvani of rasa.
Yes.
Bahu dhanyavada.
Okay. No problem. Ram sir, I think he was
today's class has been wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Sometimes I don't understand a question that is being asked, especially when it is started in Sanskrit and you respond in Sanskrit. So if it is very important, please share the intent of the question. Sure.
Visritvarengarde, I think they asked the definition of that and vyutpatti of it, the etymological derivation of the word Visritvara. That was the only thing that was asked in Sanskritam here. Yeah. As long as you understand that அப்படியே ஸ்ப்ரெட் ஆகிறதுக்கு ஒரு சக்தி இருக்கு. If you understand that prasarana sheelam, then it is fine. Don't get too much into the etymology.
To tell you the truth, my father would say you are an Ikshara Kukshi or something like that. So I don't follow Sanskrit in its as it should be followed. I'm just listening and hoping that something will percolate into me.
No, as long as you understand the concepts, that is more than enough, sir. Don't worry.
Yeah, there is no demand in me to understand everything. Okay, thank you. I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I think it's over. Maybe we'll take up questions next class, next week. Thank you.